Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the late start, a couple of technical hitches. I'd like to get started though, because we're 10 minutes late and we've got a big agenda today. My name's Adam Gosling from the APNIC Secretariat. My first duty for the day is to run through the NRO NC election procedures. I'll try and run through these quickly to keep us moving. If you have any questions, please come to the mic. As soon as you have the question, I'll address it. The Number Resource Organisation, Number Council members have a series of duties to oversee recommendations on global IP address policy that result from RIR developed PDPs, and have direct influence on the implementation of these policies. They participate in the management of policy development activities at the regional level, and importantly, they appoint people to the ICANN Board of Directors. You can find more about it at the URL. I'm sorry, I've got the wrong slides. I thought I didn't recognize them. I hope I'm not going to have one of those days. So this slide set covers the following things. I'll get straight into it. The NRO NC is defined by the NRO MOU. There are 3 members from each region, 1 appointed by the board and 2 elected by the community. The selection process in each region is determined separately, and so each region has a separate process for doing that. In our case, the selection procedure is determined by the APNIC EC. The 2 members that are elected during the APNIC Policy Day are each elected for a 2-year term, and they're staggered, so we have an election every year. The seat that we're filling today is for the term 1st of January 2016 to the 31st of December 2017. I won't go through those or read out the URLs, but we called for nominations, and online voting was available and has now closed. Our election chair is Ms. Sylvia Simalan. She's chair of the Indonesian IT Federation, and her responsibilities are to oversee the election process, to appoint election scrutineers, to resolve any disputes, and finally to declare the election results. Sylvia's already appointed the scrutineers, which I'll get to in a later slide. Our election officers are APNIC staff members. It's George Kuo and Connie Chan, and their responsibility is to administer the call for nominations and manage the online and on-site voting processes, supervise the ballot collection, and perform the vote count with the tellers. The election tellers are also APNIC staff members. It's Witter and Zen, and their responsibilities are to supervise the ballot box, issue the ballot papers, validate and count the votes, and report the results to the chair. Election scrutineers are usually from other internet organisations. In our case, we have 2 RIR staff members, Rumi and Huston, who, sorry, I haven't met, but welcome. They don't vote. Of course, the other RIR staff don't vote, and they've got to be independent from any APNIC member or candidate. So these were the people that were appointed by the election chair. Their responsibilities are to observe the election tellers in counting the votes. They don't handle or touch the ballot papers, and they notify the chair in case of anything, any anomaly. The online voting period details are there. It's accessible via my APNIC, and it closes usually 2 days, I think, 2 days before the on-site voting starts. The on-site voting will start with the election chair in a moment, and will end at 2 p.m, 1400 UTC plus 7, that's local time. Each registered APNIC 40 attendee is entitled to one vote as an individual. So this is not a member vote, this is a community vote. If you're registered to attend APNIC 40, you can get a ballot paper and participate in the election. The voting desk is set up just outside those doors. The ballot box will be placed there after the chair announces the opening of the voting, and the election tellers will supervise it at all times. However, inquiries should be directed to the election officers at the voting desk. The ballot paper is marked with a unique stamp and is not valid if it's not stamped, and if there's no boxes marked, or if there's more than one box marked, so you can only mark one box for one candidate, and if that's ambiguous, it will be disregarded. It looks like that. It's yellow, it must be stamped, and you mark one box only. The counting procedure is supervised by the scrutineers, but the votes are counted by the tellers. All the ballot papers are checked. Tally forms are used to count and record and verify the total number of check marks for each candidate. And then the online voting reports are printed out simultaneously, and then they're kind of merged, right? So the on-site votes and the online votes are tallied together. Votes for each candidate are calculated by combining the total votes from online and on-site votes. Sorry, jumped ahead. Oh, doesn't like that slide. Now am I in the right place? The election chair will announce the results at around 3 p.m. That's 1500 UTC plus 7. That's local time, 3 p.m. today. And the declaration will include the name and total vote count for each candidate, the total number of valid and invalid ballots, notice of any disputes and resolutions, and disclosure of any communication from the election scrutineers. The actual time for that may be adjusted if we're in the middle of a presentation in the policy SIG. So it's around 3 p.m. Notices of dispute. Any complaint regarding the conduct of the election must be lodged in writing with the election chair at the conference. Such notices must be lodged no later than 1 hour before the scheduled declaration of the election. So that's 1 hour prior to 3 p.m. local time. Notices may be lodged by members through their authorised voting representative or by candidates directly with the election chair. Jumping ahead with this a bit. The election chair will resolve the disputes at her discretion, and the election chair shall provide notice of all lodged disputes and her decision at the declaration of the election. If anyone has any questions regarding the procedures? Okay, thank you. Have we got this mic working yet? Yep. I'd now like to invite Sylvia to the podium.
Okay, yeah. So I'll just do that.
Yes, do that. We have to wait the slide.
Oh, no. I still have my feet.
Okay, thanks very much for your time, Sylvia.
Thank you. That's not.
through that slide before. This was the wrong one that I did, so those are the, maybe we can skip that if that's okay with everyone, and move on to the next slide is the nominees list.
This one, right? Okay. My name is Sylvia Sumarlin. Good morning, everybody. I'm honored to serve as the election chair of the NRO NC election today. Before I invite the nominees to give their speeches, I would like to mention the roles and responsibilities of the NRO number council members. You can find them on the NRO NC webpage listed on the slide. It was a slide before. These are all important duties. I am now going to invite the nominees up to share their vision with you and introduce themselves to you. After that, I will open the ballot box and show you that there is nothing inside the ballot box. Then, George Kuo and I will take the box outside to the voting desk, and that is where the voting will start. In the order of the 8 nominations received, I would like to introduce the nominees to you. The first nominees is Raja Muhammad Azim, and then Muhammad Nadir bin Ali, Dhruba Adhikari, Kong Diep, Tomohiro Fujisaki, Sandip Gol, Elias Mandawali, Sarjono Insani. Unfortunately, only Kong Diep and Tomohiro Fujisaki are present today, and the other nominees were unable to attend Jakarta. Would anyone from the audience like to say a few words for any of the absent nominees? No? Okay, we'll proceed. Next, if Kong would like to come to the mic to make a brief statement, please do so now. Yes, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kong Diep, nominee of NRO NC. I'm from SIG Cambodia. I will contribute my effort to the internet community and the NRC rules. And I think it made my experience, knowledge, and willingness to be part of the internet community. I hope I could do more on the internet community, especially in the APNIC regions. And thank you for giving me a chance to present myself at APNIC 40 in Jakarta. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kong. Finally, if Tomohiro would like to come to the mic to make a brief statement, please do so now. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Election Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tomohiro Fujisaki, working for NTT. And first of all, as a current NRO NC member, I would like to say to all of you, thank you so much for your continuous support to the NRO activities and also the APNIC activities. And recent several years, I've been attending internet-related meetings such as APNIC meetings, IETF meetings, and ICANN meetings, and also the Internet Society meetings, and we realized that the community involvement is so important and the key to maintain the current internet and to improve the internet whole. So I would like to ask all of you your continuous support to the internet activities, and of course I will continue involving the internet activities. Thank you so much.
Someone would like to speak on behalf of the nominees.
Okay, which nominees? All right. I just being told that there will be someone speaking on one of the nominees. Please come forward and tell which nominees that you are going to be speaking on behalf of. Thank you. Okay.
Good morning, all. I'll just be telling a bit about Elias Mandawali. Elias is a Papua New Guinean, and he's the Chief Executive Officer of Roach Telnet in Papua New Guinea. And that their business profile is to install, implement IP network and internet services, computer-driven telecommunications, PNG-wide. But I'm sure he'll be, he would have liked to be here, and would like to, being a Pacific Islander also, to increase the Pacific Island participation in APNIC. Thank you.
Okay, that's for Elias Mandawali, I guess. We will move on to the next stage, and that is the opening of the ballot box to show that it is empty. Please come, George. Okay. You have to okay. All right. See, there's nothing inside, it's empty, and then George will seal it right now. Is there a lock? No. Is there a lock? Okay. So it's locked already. George and I will take it to the voting desk just outside that side, this conference hall. Next, I would like to declare the election opened, and the ballot box will be kept outside and supervised by the election tellers. Reminder, voting ends at 2 p.m. today, and that's for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sylvia. That's all for the NRO elections right now, and we'll be able to get on with the SIG meeting. So it's now Masato's show. We'll just get the slides up. Masato, will you be doing from there?
Hi, good morning, everybody. So let's start regular track with policy SIG. Today we have 3 sessions. First one is today we have 3 sessions. I think that is pretty enough for this agenda. But the problem is we also have AMM in fourth session, and APNIC staff and I have only 30 minutes to make a report. So I want to keep this schedule very strictly, so please help me. Anyway, in the first session, we already have NRO NC election, and also we have policy SIG co-chair election. And I will explain about some administration staff in next slide, and also we have one informal presentation about the status of APNIC's IPv4 resources, exhaustion, and transfers from Geoff Huston. And in second session, we have one community consultation about policy documentation, because Adam is updating and actually combining several policy documents to one document. And also we have informal presentation about IPv4 mining strategic reserves. And also we have 2 official proposals. First one is a Prop 114, which is modification in the ASN and eligibility criteria. And the second one is a Prop 113, which is modification in the IPv4 eligibility criteria. Then in third session, we have another another consultation, which is who is update from the Secretariat by Guanyan. And second item in the third session is informal presentation about IP addressing and IoT or MTM services from Tomohiro. And last item of today is a Prop 115, which is registration of detailed assignment information in WHOIS database. It will be presented by Tomohiro again. I would like to move to first item of today's meeting. As described in SIG guideline, first item should be policy SIG co-chair election. So I'm very glad to have someone as nominee because we don't have any, we have no candidate in Fukuoka, but this time someone was kindly offer kindly accept to. He kindly accepted it. So where's someone? Oh, please stand up. So since we only have one candidate, let me go to ask your opinion. So one second. So is there anybody who is opposed to choosing choose someone as co-chair? Nobody? Is it okay? So. So under current practice, new chair or new co-chair term will start just after this meeting, but I'd like to invite someone to the podium as he can familiar with how I'm managing this session. So, please sit down. Oh, sorry. And again, thank you very much for your volunteer. Then these are regular slides, but let me explain a little bit again. This is policy SIG charter, and it says our charter is developing policy and procedure which relate to the management and use of internet address resources by APNIC, NIRs, and ISPs within this region. And address resources means IP address and also its numbers right now. Then, in addition to this meeting, we have mailing list as another discussion place. It is also a very important discussion place. And right now, we only have 3 action items, and actually these action items are same as 3 proposal under discussions, because all proposal in last meeting was returned to the mailing list. Then next one is introducing me. I'm of course I'm chair, and we have 3 NRO NC, and after cannot attend this meeting, but he will present his proposal by remotely in second session, and I want to introduce Dr. AJ Kamal. Please stand up and show your face. And Tomohiro. So these 3 participants are serving as NRO NC. Then let me explain about the PDP. Actually, PDP has 8 steps. So we are in third step, which is discussing in the meeting and also asking consensus at policy SIG meeting. Then, it's right, says tomorrow, but actually this time we have AMA in the same day. It's okay, Adam. It's not regular schedule. So we will also if one proposal will lead to consensus in this
meeting, we also ask consensus again in AMM, okay? Then after that, it goes to comment period over to confirm consensus over the mailing list. And normally it is 4 weeks, but in some case, chair can extend to up to 8 weeks. Then if there is no further objections, it goes to EC, and EC will endorse it, and it will be implemented. Then, since our PDP is based on consensus base, so it's not voting. Consensus means it is a general agreement taking into consideration comments on the mailing list and at the meeting. So I will consider comments on the mailing list also. Then objections, we have two types of objections. One is minor one, and second is a major one. And minor one means some problems may occur for some members of the group, but it's not end of the world. But major objections means major problems will occur for parts of the community. So it may cause severe problem for your business, or it may cause severe technical issue. In such case, it will be called as major objections. And please work, if you have objections, please work together to the authors or any other supporters to resolve your objections. And gouging consensus. Under current practice, we are asking consensus to remote participants also. And show of hands is a way of broadly gouging opinions. So please aware that it's not voting. So if there is a couple of strong objections, it is enough to break consensus. Please note about this point. And we have, from last year, we have Confer as our electric consensus asking tool. And I think this time, this meeting is third meeting to use Confer. And I will use it from second session, as it require registration. And the way of registration is included in the email which Adam sent in this morning to the mailing list. So please check and register to the Confer during this session or in morning break. I have already explained. Yeah. Since we made some minor changes, all previous registrations were cleared. So you need to register to Confer again. Then we also, I think from this meeting, we start to provide translated summary of proposals. And because APNIC survey, which have held in last year, asked these activities. So now each proposal, not all text of proposal, but summary of proposal are translated to these languages: Chinese simplified, Chinese traditional, Hindi, Indonesian, Japanese, Korean, Thai, Vietnamese. I think these translations are done by APNIC staff, right? Okay, but anyway, thank you very much for these works, and you can find them in on proposal pages. And this activity, this translation will be continued to future meetings. Then in Fukuoka, we have some technical sessions in parallel, so I got complaint about that. So especially we have in Fukuoka, we have lightning talks in parallel in the first sessions. So in here, I would like to ask your preference. Right now, we have 3 options. First one is a no conflict with any session. So it means policy SIG is, how can I say, only unique session. And second option is no conflict with any sessions, but except tutorials. And third option is we don't care about any conflict. So to make it short, I would like to ask to raise your hand. And so can you raise your hand if you don't want to have any conflict with any other sessions? Please raise your hand right now. Okay, so okay, let's go to second options. Please raise your hand if you don't want to conflict with any technical session, but tutorial will be okay. Please raise your hand right now. Okay, thank you. So if you don't care any conflicts, please raise your hand right now. Oh, so there is nobody. So it seems people care about these conflicts, especially with technical sessions. So let me feed it back to EC and also program committee to then try to resolve this issue. Okay, let me skip this one. So this is all of administration staff. Is there any comments or question about this part? Okay, maybe not. So let's go to next presentation with Geoff. Yeah.
No problem. Good morning all, my name is Geoff Huston, I work with APNIC. I work in research, and part of the reason why we have such an activity is actually to provide feedback to this process. Because when you make policies around the distribution of addresses, it's helpful to understand what the results were. Did they do what you anticipated they were intended to do? Is the policy working in terms of what you thought its intent was? And so what we've been doing over the last, I think, couple of meetings, and certainly in Fukuoka, is giving you some feedback as to what's happening with addresses. Now, it's not a comprehensive summary in each meeting. I'm trying to highlight particular things that seem to be of topical interest and simply go and deep dive into those and give you some detail. And so today what I'd like to do is look at where we are with IPv4 and how quickly we're running through it and what the impact is and how much addresses are moving around via the transfer market. So in the first instance, let's have a look at exhaustion. This is a graph that probably a lot of you have seen. It's describing, since the start of 2013, the rate at which addresses have been handed out from each of the 5 regional internet registries. Now, it starts in January 2013, and as you would probably remember, APNIC got down to its last /8 in 2011. And since then, by and large, APNIC has been working out of those last /8 policies. So the dark blue line there, God knows where the laser pointer is. Anyone know? Oh, well, stuff it. There's a blue line and it goes down to the right. That's APNIC. Ripe ran out in September 2012, and the lighter blue line is Ripe's last/8 allocations. Both of those look as if they will last for some time. The brown line, LACNIC, they ran out in May 2014. They did not do a last/8, but they have 2/11 pools that they're using to assist in the transition, as far as I'm aware, and they are being very slowly depleted according to their policies. So since May, what you find with LACNIC is a very, very slow drain rate on the residual addresses. ARIN reserved a /10 and did not mark it as available, and because of that, I've kept it out. And so what happens with ARIN is it runs all the way to the bottom, but there's a strange sort of process they're using, strange to me. Hopefully they understand it. There's a process they're using that tries to precisely match the applicant against what's left. So when they got down to a relatively small pool of addresses, the drain rate slowed right down, and those last few addresses left in ARIN's pool are certainly taking some time to be handed out. Any time now, the last of those small number of /24s or whatever they are will go. APNIC still has a fair few addresses left, 2.5/8s. They kind of stopped allocating at the start of 2015. Up until then, they looked like they'd have around 4 years to go, but the allocation rates out of APNIC for this year have basically slowed right down, so it's hard to see where they go. So here's my best projection for APNIC, mid-2019, but quite frankly it's based on the last sort of few years. The 9 months of this year have been a considerably different profile. I am not sure what's happening in APNIC. Maybe Alan or someone else from APNIC might care to enlighten us if they understand what's going on. I'm afraid I can't tell from the outside. That's ARIN blown up. They got down to 0.5 of a /8, and now they're trying to do sort of precise matching of applicant to what's left, and that's taking some time. So as you see, there was a bit of a rapid rundown just around May, and they got down to this point where what was left was basically just small amounts, and they're just working through those right now. Ripe's final /8. Things were going okay until around March of this year when the allocation rate speeded up. And there's kind of a variance going on with Ripe. If that continues and they keep going a little bit faster, they'll run out at around November 2019 from that pool. Their longer term trend would see them running through till about March 2021. From where we sit in 2015, doesn't make much difference. They've kind of got 4 years, I think, at this particular point. LACNIC, if you blow it right up, the way they're sort of moving very, very slowly through that final /11 or the 2/10s, again, some variance, but at this particular point, somewhere between 2017 January and around about July, maybe August 2017, we'll see all of LACNIC also run dry at the current rates. So APNIC, this is getting just a wee bit curious, because when you look at the rates of addresses out the door, we had a rate that was relatively slow until approximately March 2014, and then it doubled, and we started handing out a lot more addresses. And so when I look at this right now as a single pool of addresses, it's going to run out somewhere around mid-2017 and very early 2018, just off those numbers. So that's the summary of what I said. LACNIC, around about 1.5 to 2 years. APNIC, the way we're doing it, around 2 to 2.5 years. APNIC, I think, is around about 4 years. The Ripe NCC, my guess is 4.5 to 5.5 years at this point. And ARIN, they're not using that last /10, so you just can't tell at this point because there's no data to model it from. So at this point, I just simply cannot predict that. But we're APNIC. So this one seems a bit weird. What happened in March last year? Why did the numbers change so dramatically? So I want to now look very tightly at APNIC and just concentrate on APNIC and its last /8. We don't run one address pool. If you look at APNIC closely and just look at their published data, so I'm not using any internal data, this is solely from published sources, there are actually 4 distinct pools of addresses. We run our last /8 out of an actual /8, 103.0.0.0/8. The pool, of course, is 16.7 million addresses. We have assigned 6.1 million addresses. 1/3 of a million addresses are reserved. Interesting. And 10 million addresses are available. As you may recall, we also, all the RIRs, handed addresses back, recovered addresses from the early V4 allocations back to IANA, and a global policy has been redistributing those addresses equally to all of the RIRs. APNIC, like all the other RIRs, has to date received 3.6 million addresses via that process. We have assigned 2.9 million. There are 737,000 left, and when I compiled these slides in the middle of August, 16,000 addresses were reserved. Not sure why. Like all the RIRs, addresses had been allocated before we existed. They were sort of from pools that were originally handed out from the old Class A's, Class B's, and even some Class C's, and they have drifted into APNIC for various reasons. Early registration transfer, the wind-up of AUNIC and NZNIC, and various other reasons meant that APNIC inherited address pools. Those inherited addresses number in total 51 million addresses. 49 million are assigned, none are available, but interestingly 2.6 million have been marked as reserved by the registration services folk, which is a relatively large pool of addresses that are being marked as reserved. Last and not least, IANA gave APNIC a bunch of allocations over the years. The total amount they gave us was 803 million addresses. Thank you, IANA. And we have assigned 802 million of them. So we've been doing very well. Obviously, none are available because we ran out. But interestingly, 1.59 million are reserved. So the total reserve pool is actually 4.6 million addresses, or approximately 1/4 of a /8. Available is 11 million addresses comprised of those 2 pools, the last /8 and the IANA returns. So I'm going to look at the last /8 first and just concentrate on those numbers. This is the policy. Every single member has one chance of one allocation of up to a /22. So you can get it as 4/24s or 2/23s, whatever. 1,000 addresses is as much as you can get. So that's the graph as of mid-August 2015, 6 million assigned, 10 million still available. At that point, 296,000 reserved. I actually looked at the date when they started handing out, and I must admit sometimes what they do in registration services is a mystery to me and possibly a mystery to you. The first bunch of addresses were handed out from the bottom of the block. The second bunch were handed out from the top of the block. The third block were handed out sort of coming down from the top. The fourth block were all the way back to the start, and now they're allocating out a 192. Some super secret source, I have no idea. But you know, that's the kind of pace at which, or sorry, where the address is coming from out of 103. It's not linear. So it's not start at the bottom and move up. Here are the allocation sizes coming out of that block per year, 2011, 2012, etc. 2015, the light blue, the light yellow, is low because it's just the year to date. Obviously, most folk are getting a /22. The next largest is actually a /24 and then some /23s. You notice 2014, there was quite a jump. That's a lot of /22s out the door. There were about 1,150 or so in 2013, and almost, I need my glasses, 1,800 in 2014. So no one should have more than a /22, should they? No, they shouldn't. And I started looking and I actually found a bunch of things that kind of point to the fact that there's one sort of entity that's got 1,280, 4 with 1,500, 70 have 2,048 addresses, and I've got a URL there. I sort of did some matching and found that there's been some subsequent movement, transfers, etc., where folk have been aggregating themselves up and have larger than that minimum holding out of that 103/8. So it looks like sort of post-allocation mergers and acquisitions and transfers, and sort of there is a certain amount of aggregation, including one entity that has 14,000 addresses because they've just been super busy. That's the countries that received allocations from the /8 based on the volume of addresses, not the number of allocations, but the volume of addresses. So China is currently has got 5,200 /24s, or the equivalent thereof. The next largest with India with around 4,800, then Australia at around 2,400, Japan at 2,100, and so on. Have a look at the slides online for the fine detail. But that's the national breakdown of where those last /8 addresses have gone to so far. Interestingly, not all of them are advertised. And I find that just a wee bit curious because certainly this is it, there's nothing left. So you would have thought that folk, when they get it, would immediately advertise it and use it, but of those 6 million that have gone out the door, 1.5 million are not advertised. Recent or old? That graph is a time series, as it's a cumulative time series, so what it points out is even stuff that was allocated 40 months ago, approximately 1/4 of those addresses that are now almost 4 years old are still unadvertised. So that light blue line at the bottom is kind of the growth of the unadvertised pool. There's a certain amount of folk getting these allocations and not announcing them into the global system, and that's been a continuous issue. This is the sort of red-blue map, where red is advertised and blue is unadvertised, and you find that the unadvertised address blocks are everywhere. So that early part, the bottom of the block, there's a fair deal of blue. The more recent stuff in the middle, there's a fair deal of blue. So that the unadvertised sort of address pool is universally smeared over most of the block. There's no sort of, I get it, I advertise it. Some folk get it and appear to be using it for purposes other than announcing it in the global routing table. Consumption. Now I want to model how long it's going on. This is the number of allocated addresses per day since we started running out of this block. And if you do basically a least squares fit, you will find that the trend is slowly increasing. There are a few days around a year ago and again at the start of this year where the hostmasters were doing an extra special good job and a whole bunch of addresses left the factory, but most of the time it's been a slow and steady increase. If I project that pool and that pool alone, those 10 million addresses on the rate that we've been seeing in 2015 will last somewhere between 4 to 5 years. Somewhere between June, July 2019 and late December 2020. So if that trend changes, obviously the date changes, but that's the last /8. The other pool of addresses is the IANA returns. That's that 737,000 available addresses. This is where they are so far. These are the addresses we have got back from IANA and the date. So that's from the IANA registry itself, which records which addresses it gave to which registry. That's the pool status. Around 19% of what we got given is still available and a small amount is reserved. Almost everybody took a /22. Tiny numbers of 23s and 24s. Interestingly, a couple of folk appear to have a /21 and there's one party with a /20. It's just in the data. This is the economy distribution and I'm comparing blue, last /8, yellow, IANA return. And most of the time they're comparable. So China has a pretty comparable amount of allocations from both pools, as does India. Australia seems to have done more out of the last /8 than compared to the IANA return. and that's also the case in Hong Kong and notably in Japan. So in some communities, everyone's done a last/8 but hasn't done an IANA return, whereas in other communities, the members have decided to get both, perhaps at the same time, whatever. So they're similar but not identical. Advertised versus unadvertised. In the last/8, 66% are advertised, 33% is unadvertised. The IANA returned is different. Only 46% of what we handed out is advertised. And 1.5 million addresses are not being advertised. So if you get a block from the IANA return pool, 54% of folk don't advertise it yet. I'm not sure why, but there's certainly a much higher rate of not have advertising it. This is a breakdown of entities. Now, of course, with NIRs and members of NIRs, what's an entity is difficult. So I'm trying to peer through an NIR and look at folk, whether they're a member of TWNIC or whether they're a direct member of APNIC, did they get an address and from which pool? So this is a count of sort of entities that I see in the registry. So 4,803 entities are listed as having sort of addresses from the pre-exhaustion state and no other pool, out of a total of 5,987 folk who have addresses sort of in APNIC, and some of them also had some stuff from the last/8 and some stuff from the IANA return. Interestingly, we now have 11,300 members. And so a total of, if I can do my sums very quickly, approximately, well, 3,000 folk, sorry stenographers, 3,000 folk only have an allocation from the last/8. Interesting. And equally, if I've got this right, 14 folk only have an allocation from the IANA return pool and nothing else. So basically there are 5,900 entities who've had addresses from the old pools, 6,500 from the last/8, and 2,800 from the IANA return pool. And that's the breakdown of who has what. The IANA return pool is not accelerating, it's decelerating. So over the period that we've been using it, the consumption rates have been falling, and that makes some of these projections a little bit difficult. So I've used a linear projection. This projection takes into account, it was done just before the most recent return. So we received another block of addresses, a /14, I think. Anyone willing to correct me? Can't see a thing, let's call it a /14. Just between friends, what the hell. We received some more addresses. The pool that we have will last until approximately end of January next year. We will then get a very, very small allocation, /16 or something, in March, and that will last a couple of weeks. But basically that pool is done at the start of next year. We have about 7 months left, if nothing else changes. So that return pool will disappear a lot more quickly. So that's the state of the reserve pool. We have around 4 years or so in the last/8. We have around 7 months or so in the IANA recovered pool, unless something happens to that pool size. And we have around 4.6 million reserved addresses. That is realistically something for a different presentation and perhaps some more information. I did not look at the reserved addresses in this particular study. So I'll move right on to transfers, because of course, when we run out, you have to look at each other. APNIC runs a transfer registry, and all of this is from the registry. So if you're leasing, I can't see you. If you've decided to move addresses without telling APNIC, we can't see you. So there's a class of activity that isn't included here, and I have no way of knowing whether it's big or small or anything else. This is simply what's in the registry. So 1,086 transfers were listed in the registry, 9,014 happened between APNIC members of one sort or another, and 172 transfers were from ARIN into APNIC. The total volume of addresses is close to a /8 equivalent, 14 million addresses. And interestingly, those 172 transactions which are imports accounted for 4 million addresses, ARIN into APNIC. This is the two graphs, the number of transfers and the addresses transferred. So the top one is the number, the bottom one is the size. Realistically, what it's showing is that it's increasing in volume. We started at doing around 2 to 3 per month. We're now doing between 30 and 80 per month. We were doing approximately, where are we now? Around about an average of around 5 to 6,000 /24s per month in 2015, and that's pretty much double what we were doing in 2015. So the transfer market is increasing in size and in volume. That's pretty obvious. I was wanting to know if folk are buying and selling old addresses or new addresses. And the top graph is the age distribution. How old was that address? When was it first registered? A bunch of addresses allocated in the last year, when APNIC was still allocating, have been transferred. That's that peak at around 2010. So that's the first sort of big spike. There was a significant amount of addresses allocated by APNIC in 2010, and of those, they form a considerable volume of the addresses being transferred so far up until today. The larger distributed spike is actually around between 1990 and 1995, before APNIC existed. And that's basically movements of this so-called legacy or various space where the original registrant has sold it for whatever reasons and it's moved on. So the age distribution gives you approximately 2 peaks. Transfers have been going on for 4 years, and I was kind of interested, do people get an address and transfer it, or do they keep it for a while? What's the age of the address at the point of transfer? And what you find is that there is certainly a peak of activity that if you got an address within the last 5 years, there's a fair few folk transferring those addresses. So recent addresses do move. And there's another peak between 20 and 25 years old. Folk who have had it forever are also moving those addresses. So kind of 2 pronounced peaks, quite new and quite old, and very little in the middle. The original registration date of these addresses, just for the last /8, are folk moving addresses from the last /8. So now I've just focused attention into 103/8, and certainly there is a some activity of address movement coming out of that last /8, which explains why there are relatively large allocations in the /8, or what appear to be, are actually individual allocations that have been amalgamated through transfers of one form or another. And there's certainly a peak of 7 that happened when the actual allocation was less than 2 months old, and another peak just when the allocation is 1 year old. So you receive an allocation, 12 months later it's transferred, and that's that second peak. So again, 2 peaks, very, very recent, and around 12 months old. APNIC is a bunch of economies, and so what I'm looking at now is regional trade, imports and exports and domestic transfers. Who's doing what in terms of countries? So these are the countries of origin of transfers and the countries of destination. China has imported from other countries, including ARIN, which is sort of a country in this thing, 22 transfers totaling 3.5 million addresses. 10 transactions are exports from China totaling 1.4 million addresses, and 35 transactions went from a Chinese entity to a Chinese entity of a total of 1.5 million addresses. So China had basically 67 transfers of 6.5 million addresses. So you see ARIN there had exported, and we have imported 4.5 million addresses. Japan is also, Hong Kong is active. This is ranked by the size of the import. China, Hong Kong, Japan, Australia, Singapore, India, etc. There's a lot of detail. Go and look at it online if you're fascinated by it. I certainly find it interesting. We are a net importer. Japan has the largest domestic market. So if you look at the Japan domestic, 2.3 million addresses in a total of 366 transactions from a Japanese entity to another Japanese entity. If you take exports and imports and subtract one from the other, China is a net importer. They're 2 million addresses more out of the net transfer activity. And the largest regional net exporter, interestingly, is New Zealand, with 72,000 addresses. And of course, ARIN was the largest source. That's a heat map of all of that, showing the from and the to. So you notice ARIN's addresses went to a whole set of economies because ARIN is listed across the entire band. You also notice Singapore has done a fair deal of activity across a number of economies, as has Australia and Hong Kong. Who are the largest sellers? Who disposed of addresses? Nortel's bankruptcy, 2.3 million addresses were purchased in this region. There's a company in China called CNISP, Union Technology, that sourced 1.4 million addresses, CloudSense 1.1, and you can read the rest as well as I can. There is one I should note down the bottom. Bank of America, US, transferred the addresses to Bank of America, Hong Kong. And they chose to do this via a listed transfer. You could actually regard that as just being a straight internal movement. Who's buying? These are the buyers. AliSoft in China, 3.8 million, CloudSense, 1.1, Foxtel in Australia, 500,000, etc., etc. I also looked to see if there were folk moving things around. And there's perhaps one that has been most obvious. CNISP sold a block to CloudSense. That block was then subdivided and further sold to SONET, Haiyong Data, StarHub, and AliSoft. So the one large block was subdivided into 4 smaller blocks and then resold and moved onward. So a /12 became a bunch of 17s, a 14 and a 15. I actually see 1 million addresses being transferred multiple times, showing some degree of what one could infer as being brokering activity, where the addresses have moved into a party and then moved out again. Sorry, I missed a slide. 319 different sellers, 320 different buyers. Someone bought twice or something. There are 596 folk out of a total of 11,000. 596 doing transfers. That's not a lot. It's not, 10% or even 20%. It's a little bit smaller than that. How large are these transfers? So there are 480 distinct transactions that I can actually find as a transfer block, and this is the size distribution. Almost 100 of them around the /22/23 size. So in other words, between 1,000 and 500 addresses in size. The next minor peak is around a /20, and /16s appear popular. Larger blocks, 12s, 13s and 14s, have been rare, 1s and 2s. What could I say about transfers? It's a really small scale activity. There's not a lot of it happening. We have 875 million addresses out there in the APNIC registry. Only 1.4% of those addresses, or 12 million, have been registered in a transfer. And they involve 596 entities out of 11,000. That's just 5% of the number of members. So quite frankly, it is a small-scale operation. How long will this last? It's up to you. If you all go and deploy V6, V4 doesn't matter anymore. And quite frankly, the amount of V6 happening in the world, we can see some scenarios in the coming years where the transfers will just no longer be important. Sooner or later, it looks like someone will be able to stand up a V6-only service and it will work. At that point, V4 becomes an interesting proposition. So right now, transfers has not been a big activity. It's just bubbling along relatively quietly. Some activity, but not a lot. Any questions on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Geoff. Is there any comment?
Guang Liang from APNIC. I just have a couple of clarification for Geoff, just a few points to clarify what Geoff says. For the first point is the 103/A pool. Why APNIC hostmaster not actually making allocation from beginning to the end for sequence?
Why we weren't allocating from 0 to 256? Yes. Why did you randomly choose numbers?
Yeah, just want to clarify how we make that jumping around. At the beginning, when we got the /A, we do RQA, we call quality insurance. So we're picking up some of the range is bit dirty, so we mark reservoir. So we're trying to avoid give those a bit dirty space to our members because this last piece of IPv4. We're trying to give them a very
So you were
clear
trying
one.
to avoid those addresses
Yes,
that were
yes,
attracting a lot of garbage incoming traffic.
Yes, that's the reason why we're picking around different range, actually by our automated program. So try to expand that. And second point is Geoff also mentioned there's some reserve space in APNIC pool in public view. Basically, those terminated space reclaimed by APNIC or returned by the APNIC members. And we mark it as reserve in the public statistic. Some of them actually still under quarantine, and if after clean, we will return that to the fee pool. And part of them is historical resource. We reclaim it, and we are seeking legal advice to see if we can actually use them. And that is the second point. Third point
Let me stop at this point
Yes.
and highlight something you said to the policy group. Some of these addresses that are currently marked as reserved may be returned to the free pool. The pool that I believe Guang Liang is referring to is the recovered pool. The recovered pool will be empty somewhere in February next year. So you're going to have to restart it.
Yes, correct.
And there may need to be a policy about folk who are in the queue when you ran dry, who gets to be at the front of the queue when you restart that queue. I have no idea. You might want to talk about it.
Yes, very good point. And actually those recover space will return to the recover pool and will fill it up by the end of this year. And of course, one day this recover pool will be empty. And what we are going to do, the policy there's no clear instruction for APNIC, and we just say finish, that's it. But in ARIN, they have a waiting list policy. Like when you finish the pool, and no more to the member, and then your request will be put into a waiting list. In my understanding, hostmaster may do the same thing. When you come in, we approve, and then but no space in the pool, we may put you into a waiting list. Whenever the space comes into the pool, and we may, based on the order, to make the allocation.
Do you think this policy SIG might offer you some guidance as to this waiting list?
Yes, probably the policy SIG can discuss this, maybe
now.
Tell the hostmaster, should we actually create a waiting list for the people actually, for those unmet requests? Probably talk about it after my third comment. My third point is some of the organizations Geoff mentioned, they more than /22 from the file /A. You actually pointed out. APNIC hostmaster never allocate more than a /22 from the file /A pool to a member. That is guided by the policy. Some of the organizations, actually, they have more than /22 from the file /A pool, was due to the match and acquisition after the allocation, or due to some transfers. That caused it, but you can see from public, some of the organizations, they have more than /22 from the file /A pool. And this point also maybe we can bring up to the policy SIG is, should we have a policy to actually stop people transfer file session space. In ARIN and WebNCC, actually they have a clear policy say you are allowed now to transfer in 24 months, such policy. But APNIC, we don't have a clear policy say you are not allowed to transfer those allocation space, like a file session space. And what APNIC hostmaster do is, we ask you not to transfer within 12 months when you request for it. And in this 12 months, we not normally approve your transfer.
So folk are being asked not to transfer for 12 months, but there's no clear policy that, if you will, backs you up with that request at this point in time.
Yes.
Okay,
so
thank you.
The policy maybe, this is the time for the people maybe bring up to really a clear policy saying that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gania. Then regarding the operation during final exhaustion phase, I think ARIN has very concrete operational procedure, right? Queuing applicants and how to prioritize applicants. You don't want to explain that? Can you explain how ARIN is operating or proceeding application in last stage? I think you have a concrete operational procedure right now.
No one, oh, Leslie's here. Do you want to answer that, Leslie? I'm like, I can informally describe it, but you know, you're from ARIN.
Thank you.
Okay, hi, Leslie Nabil from ARIN. So we have, I think you're talking about our waiting list. Is that what that policy?
Yes.
Okay, so when you come to ARIN, you have an option to either go on a waiting list or to accept a smaller block. You know, if you qualify for /20, but all that ARIN has left is /24s, which is the current situation, you can either accept that single /24 now, or you can go on a waiting list and wait and hope that space will come back to satisfy your original approval, which was a /20. So we had over 60 organizations on the waiting list. We recently got our allocation from IANA, and that was used to satisfy 14 requests on the waiting list. But you do have an option. You don't have to go on the waiting list. We're finding people either drop their request, they opt to go on the waiting list, or they accept that smaller block. Does that help
Yes.
at all?
Oh, also, I think you have procedure how to prioritize applications, right? How
the
to
way,
review.
The way it's prioritized, obviously, is by first in, first out. It's date and time stamped. So it's based on your approval date. So we go back and forth, we qualify you, and the date we approve you is the date that goes on that waiting list. So the first, you know, it just goes in order of who came in first and got approved first.
Okay, thank you.
Make sense? Okay.
So the graph behind you, Masato, shows the situation that APNIC is likely to face. We will run out of the recovered pool registry approximately early February, and at that point the answer's we can't give you any more. But sometime in March we'll receive a small residual allocation from IANA and we'll have to reopen it. Whom do we give those resources to? Is there a waiting list? What process will be used? Additionally, not included here, it may be the case that some of those 4.5 million addresses marked as reserved may be fully recovered in this period and handed into this pool. And again, we'll have this issue of how do we reopen the pool? What's the policy determining who gets it and who doesn't? Because the expectation is there won't be enough addresses to give one to everyone.
So you mean right now we have two pools, or in other words, you have two doors, but one of them will be closed
Early
after
next year.
After 7 months.
Yes.
But after a couple of months, we may open that door again, but very limited space.
Very limited space. The door will open for a day or two. Yeah.
Go ahead, Anne.
Thanks, Masato. I don't know if anyone saw Elisa's presentation in the global reports. Elise Garrick from the IANA. This situation will happen repeatedly because every 6 months until March 2019, the IANA will give us more space. And on March 2019, unless their pool changes, we'll get a /23. So,
Note for stenographer, Geoff shrugs, a /23.
so unless anyone kind of tops up that IANA pool, this is inevitable. It won't just happen next March, it'll happen every 6 months.
Then we also need to consider about running out last rush rate. It's final one, I think.
George Adaji from APNIC. Got ATAB on the webcast chat saying this idea was shot down by the community during the discussion of giving /22 from return pool. So any block in transfer for X number of months driven by policy will not work. I tried last time but willing to try again. That's all.
We're done?
Many comment comes from the APNIC staff, so is there any other comment from other folks?
Okay.
But anyway, thank you very much, Geoff. And I think this one should be discussed and dissolved because it may cause severe operational issue. So thank you very much for raising this point.
Thank you.
Okay, time is 10:28. So Adam, you want to have your presentation right now or after break? Take break? Okay. So let's take break about for 30 minutes and please come back here before 11 o'clock. And also, please do not forget to get your ballot paper and vote it. Thank you.